get all my streaming videos on demand. I can't demand them anymore.
Yes, this is actually part of the movie. Modern SpongeBob, everybody! Now, I, like many people back in the 2000s, was a major fan of SpongeBob SquarePants. I would watch the show regularly whenever it aired, and I even had some merchandise in my house, including bedsheets, an inflatable bot bag with SpongeBob and Patrick on it, and video games including a typing computer game, and this rare Ion Best Day Ever game. Yeah, remember the Ion educational gaming system? That was like the Kinect before the Kinect. But nowadays, I consider myself more of a casual fan. Like, I'm not really as big into it like I am with stuff like the Dwampyverse shows, Animaniacs, Amphibia, Pinky and the Brain, The Simpsons, and more. But I still love it and consider the classic era one of my favorite Nickelodeon shows of all time. Of course, I rewatched a lot of classic SpongeBob, along with a few select later episodes, some episodes of the spin-offs, and the first few movies in preparation for this review. And while the old stuff and the first two movies are guaranteed the best, and maybe the third movie was okay, the later episodes I've picked and what I saw of the spin-offs was pretty bad. And with Nick showing no signs of letting their most famous characters slow down, I can expect them to lose more dignity in the coming years. Like, there's so many times one can say that the pre-movie era and maybe seasons 4 and 5 are probably the best era of the show, because a lot of people tend to agree that SpongeBob went from being a childhood icon to a subpar cash cow for Nickelodeon to milk out of its teats. And now we have Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, as one of the latest additions to the SpongeBob library. Back when it was announced in 2022, alongside a Plankton movie, I was pretty curious to see what they could do with their beloved Texan squirrel in the spotlight, even despite my obvious feelings towards zombie SpongeBob. And then, at the beginning of 2024, it was leaked. Yes, the whole movie was leaked on Twitter for everyone to see, and boy howdy, people were not happy with it whatsoever, saying it looked terrible, the writing was terrible, and nothing worked. Now, before anything happens, I am not one of the people who watched the movie when it got leaked. In fact, I never like to watch any pieces of media as soon as they get leaked online before they even come out, because it is a massive disservice to the people who worked on it and just disrespectful in general. But then the trailer came out, and my thoughts on it were just baffling. I was like, I don't see the point anymore. Like, why do we need any more SpongeBob movies with how much the franchise has degraded over the years? And after watching this on Netflix out of curiosity, boy oh boy, all those reactions and my thoughts on the trailer aged perfectly because, oh my Jesus, what even is this? I know it sounds like I'm already tearing this movie to shreds before even reviewing it, but I'm gonna tell you this right now, this movie is a freaking travesty! And forgive me if I'm already sounding like what you call a sponge boomer, but I've seen other SpongeBob media like Season 6 to 8, some more recent episodes, and those horrible spin-off shows, so with that track record combined with this movie, I can say with full confidence that modern SpongeBob is zombie SpongeBob, and that I'm glad I stopped watching anything from the franchise consistently a long time ago, because this proves why there should be an end to this franchise, at least in my opinion. So now that we live in a world where yet another SpongeBob movie exists, along with 2 more this year, how bad is the damage here? Will there be any form of redemption to the franchise, or will this be a movie beyond saving more than Bikini Bottom itself? And instead of using the usual Mario catchphrase, I'm just gonna let Painty the Pirate say it right now.
Are ya ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can't hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
Bikini Bottom and all the residents that live there get scooped out of the ocean by the Bureau of Official Texas Science, or BOOTS for short, which is the science lab that Sandy Cheeks works for in Galveston, Texas, and she and SpongeBob head out of the surface to bring the city back. They soon learn that the new head of the lab, Tsunami, plans to genetically modify the citizens of Bikini Bottom into air breathers and then clone them in order to sell them as toy pets, and with the help of the Cheeks family, who are all a bunch of circus performers, it's up to Sandy and SpongeBob to stop Tsunami and save Bikini Bottom. Now, I will say, this is a good premise to go for in the Sandy Cheeks movie. As much as I dislike modern SpongeBob, this is easily something that could have worked. Well, too bad the execution fell flat on its face with this. First off, the pacing is like speed running a video game, where we don't even get to see more of Bikini Bottom and Sandy's life there, and the whole city is literally taken out in under 10 minutes during the first bit of the film. Bang! Let the games begin! What's worse, if you want to get the races going for the story in such a quick fashion, you need to set the stage in a good way and plan out what there is to lose before the protagonists kick the movie off. And the other SpongeBob movies were good at this. But no, in here it's all just go, 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 go. No slow moments, no time to balance everything out, nothing. Not even the bonding time with Sandy and the Cheeks family, despite being a slow moment, even feels like it has time to breathe because everything just wants to go way too fast. And it really made me dizzy by the end of the film. This is a problem I had among many problems with the Star Wars sequel trilogy. None of the movies were planned out with a consistent and well-paced story direction before production on The Force Awakens began, and that's arguably the biggest reason those movies ended up being as horrible as they were. And with this movie, it isn't very different here. Not only that, but some scenes can drag on for way too long without any knowledge of when to stop after they serve a purpose to the story. They go on and on just to be a cop-out for the movie's runtime since the film knew that its story wasn't good enough for a movie. I just rolled my eyes for how unnecessary some of these scenes are. They only make the movie feel much longer than it is. And the plot itself feels like not much was accomplished. There are barely a few special things that happen, and then that's the end of the picture. I don't get the point. As for the humor, oh, good lord, can we just take a moment to talk about how unbearable the humor is in this film? With the exception of that raining phase 1's joke, not a single joke in this movie is passable. A lot of the humor either tries desperately to be modern and trendy for younger audiences, or make attempts at puns, toilet jokes, or visual gags, and they either are poorly timed or never work at all. Like most other modern SpongeBob media, it actively fails to understand what made the show funny in the first place, but here, it is done in the most horrible way possible. And then, there's this disgusting scene. Whoa, hold up, what the frog was that? They actually had SpongeBob tickling kids' feet in the pool underwater? As if Dan Schneider suddenly snuck onto the set and started manipulating the film's direction. You know, I want to be shocked at this, but after all the disgusting things I've seen Nickelodeon doing, I just feel permanently unfazed at whatever they do nowadays. Now, I know Dan Schneider never had any involvement with this movie whatsoever, but just why would they do this? SpongeBob and Sandy are going across the pool in order to get from here to there on their quest to get to the lab, and SpongeBob himself is tickling the actual bare feet of human kids in the water from under the surface without once knowing how disgusting it actually is. Even if he did realize how gross it was, why would the movie think that this is okay?
Oh, that is disgusting.
This movie makes me just want to rip out my eyes from their sockets and puncture my eardrums so I no longer have to deal with it. So on that note, thank you Netflix and Nickelodeon for failing any chance you both had of convincing me that this film was not going to be a flaming pile of rubbish. All within just 25 seconds of the trailer. Absolutely amazing. SpongeBob's quality has gone down the drain over the last 6 years, even more than it did between the late 2000s and mid-2010s, and with a story as horrendously broken and unfunny as this, it has only proven to me that the damage is unfixable, knowing that this is what you've done to this once beloved turned rotting corpse of a TV series. Jesus Christ, I hate what you and this show have become!
And action.
You think The Simpsons stopped being anything worth caring for years ago because all the characters in it have become caricatures of their former selves? Try looking at modern SpongeBob, particularly this movie, and convincing me that these are the characters that made the franchise enjoyable in the first place. Every single recognizable character has been reduced into a bland, one-dimensional flanderization of what they once were in the earlier seasons, and they are at some of their absolute worst in this film. And the new characters aren't that much better either. And you want to know what the sad thing is? The actors who voice the characters have actually still given it their all. If there's anyone who knows these roles more than anything else, it's the professional veteran voice actors that have been with the show since the very beginning, so I can tell that they still have a lot of fun voicing these characters, even if Tom Kenny as SpongeBob is sounding a little more dry with age. But of course, good character writing can save bad acting, but good acting is not good enough to save bad character writing. And this movie's characters are a perfect example of the latter, on top of the fact that they spew out the most insufferable jokes in SpongeBob history and barely do anything to advance the story or even explain the whole situation with Bikini Bottom's abduction. Let's start off with the first main character of the picture, the undersea Texan squirrel herself, Sandy, who is very poorly handled in this movie as the big main star. And I really do feel bad for her longtime voice actress Carolyn Lawrence because she did a really splendid job with her performance as the beloved squirrel as always. It's just the problem is that she isn't given a whole lot to do except to be the scientist who uses her brain power and her squirrel abilities on her big quest to bring Bikini Bottom back with little development and barely even a moral to learn. They do try to include a somber moment with her, but you just end up going, what kind of lesson or moral is she supposed to learn? I don't get it. They even show that she's a flying squirrel here. Why? She's supposed to be presented as a regular land squirrel as established in her first appearance, and land squirrels are way different in their appearance from actual flying squirrels. What was the point of showing Sandy's flying squirrel abilities? Did you really have to retcon her established portrayal in the show just to answer a question no one asked? Oh gee, I wonder what type of squirrel Sandy Cheeks actually is. They could have just shapeshifted SpongeBob into a hang glider completely and it would have made sense. I know this may sound like a nitpick, and I know the point of SpongeBob as a whole is that it doesn't rely on continuity, but this is honestly the biggest plot hole I have ever seen in anything featuring SpongeBob. Speaking of whom, he's the other main character we have, who in this film has been reduced to the sidekick and comic relief who accompanies the main protagonist on their journey. And as a result, I now understand why Squidward hates him.
You're the worst neighbors ever! You don't deserve to wear those fuzzies!
I'm sorry, but why the frog did they amplify SpongeBob's stupidity higher than 11? Why is Sandy the only intelligent character in the movie while SpongeBob has been turned into an insufferable moron? As the main supplier of the comedy in this movie, none of his jokes are even remotely tolerable, and he's completely reduced from a naive yet optimistic, intelligent, and mature character into an obnoxious man-child who's obliviously happy and stupid for no reason. And I may sound like a jerk here, and I'm sorry, but with how unfunny SpongeBob is in this movie, why did you even bother having him join Sandy on her quest? Did you think SpongeBob always needed to be included as one of the main characters no matter what, all because you can't have SpongeBob without SpongeBob as a prominent character? Do you just see him as a gimmick that needs to be included alongside the actual protagonist whose name is in the title even when his name is not present? And now you not only have him as the sidekick of the movie, but you also do the nearly impossible by making him not funny at all throughout the film? You didn't have to do that! You could have shoved Sandy into the foreground as much as you wanted and left SpongeBob to be abducted alongside the other Bikini Bottom residents, including Squidward, Patrick, Gary, Mr. Krabs, and Plankton. You could have even given Sandy a brand new sidekick aside from Sparky the Robot Horse. Candace Against the Universe did it right and much better than you. You could rename the movie, pair Sandy with any other characters besides SpongeBob, and it would have the same effect. Like, what else do you want to call this movie? Saving Bikini Bottom, the SpongeBob and Sandy movie? Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks and Patrick Star movie? Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks and Squidward Tentacles movie? Oh my lord, why do you keep doing this to yourself, Nickelodeon? And speaking of the other Bikini Bottom residents, none of them serve any purpose to the plot once they've been taken away. Patrick is just there to spew unfunny toilet humor and be over the top with his stretchiness. Squidward is just there to be the punching bag once again. Mr. Krabs is just the same greedy penny pincher who might as well represent Nickelodeon today. And I don't have much else to say, so let's just talk about the new characters before my head swells up. Sandy's family are completely wasted with little development and little to do except to give Sandy and SpongeBob a ride to their destination, even though the idea of them being their own circus is a bit cool, which is too bad because aside from how they made it so that Sandy is a flying squirrel now for no reason, I do think the idea of learning more of Sandy's past and family relationships is actually a really good one, and it could have worked here. But because the movie's pacing is so terrible, it completely rushes that and forgets most of it in a matter of time. Marco Diaz and Kelly from Star vs. the Forces of Evil had more time to develop their chemistry. And then, we have the villains. Tsunami and her henchmen. Oh my god. Where in Christ's name do I even begin with them? I know many animated films tend to give the main villain some stupid henchmen, such as Pain and Panic in Hercules, Kronk in The Emperor's New Groove, and Jasper and Horace in 101 Dalmatians, but at least they're a bit competent, and at least they have a couple brain cells. These henchmen, Phoebe and Kyle, are just stupid beyond belief that I can't even process what they're actually trying to do. Not only that, but the acting by the two people playing them, holy crap, is it just awful! It is easy to tell by their performances and the jokes they crack that the actors really didn't want to be there, with no effort being put onto them, and it's about as lifeless as the picture itself.
Oh, you're such a suck-up. I can't believe you made us follow through with Sue's evil plan.
Hello? She bought us a vending machine?
With money from our paycheck.
We get paychecks?
Oh my god.
But you know what's really sad? Phoebe and Kyle aren't even the worst villains in the movie. That honor goes to Tsunami herself. Let me count the ways I despise her existence. First, her name is a terrible pun on an actual tsunami, a destructive weather condition consisting of a large ocean wave and caused by an earthquake or eruption. Like, do we want to call her a villain name that fits her personality, or fits her passion for marine biology like Susie Aquatin? Or maybe even call her a name that actually makes sense and matches her hair color like Sue Blue? No, screw that! Why don't we just blatantly call her one of the most uncreative names imaginable and play around with stupid puns with that whole tsunami bullcrap? Because people will think that it's funny. Second, she is barely even threatening enough to make her a compelling villain either writing-wise or physically. Third, her evil scheme is so nonsensical to the point that even her motivation is stupid.
That monster is gonna clone us and sell us as pets!
That's the dumbest plan I've ever heard.
Fourth, even the moment that she reveals herself is incredibly lame with no build-up to it in any way. Fifth, it completely wastes the talent of Wanda Sykes as an actor, which sucks because she's had many great acting roles throughout her career. And sixth, and the absolute worst aspect of her backstory, which is traumatizing to look at with how they superimposed her adult head on a kid's body, and we'll talk more about that later. These are things that a villain should never be. Having the most uncreative name ever thought of, not being threatening, having such a ridiculous evil plan, not showing any build up to their big reveal, and having a backstory that's physically traumatizing to look at. Even with some good voice acting, the characters in this movie are certainly not in any way the same characters we knew and loved from the early seasons of the show, and the new characters they include range from absolutely wasted to completely brain dead to just thoroughly awful. And I don't think even the most devoted fan of SpongeBob would like what they've done to them. So looking at this movie and looking back at the other SpongeBob movies, they often have a pattern in terms of how they're animated. That they often end up switching studios to deviate from the 2D animation of the show, including Sponge on the Run, which goes for a stylized computer animated look similar to the Peanuts movie. And with Saving Bikini Bottom, it looks more like it's trying to emulate what was done before in Sponge Out of Water when the Bikini Bottom gang goes up to the surface. The difference is, whereas Sponge Out of Water's computer animation was done by Method Studios, Saving Bikini Bottom was animated by Pipeline Studios, which is currently doing the Dora reboot. With that said, I like to get the stuff that the animation does a decent job at out of the way. First off, I'll give it that there are plenty of talented storyboard artists on board with this, and I can definitely tell they had some fun working on it and planning out the shots. Second, I'll admit that the animators at Pipeline did a decent job bringing the world of SpongeBob into a 3D environment by successfully capturing the character designs, the background designs, and the colors in a way that makes it look recognizable, as well as taking some liberties by having the animation allow the characters to move and be expressive just like in the show. Not too much in an overbearing manner to the point that it's nearly unwatchable like most of the recent SpongeBob episodes, but still enough to feel like the SpongeBob episodes of the 2000s and 2010s. However, there is one thing that almost ruins the animation. Even if this is made exclusively for streaming and not movie theaters, it doesn't excuse that this is a major downgrade in comparison to the other movies. If anything, I'd say this feels like Camp Coral or any of the SpongeBob games more than a SpongeBob movie. Like I said before, Mr. Krabs might as well be the new mascot of not only Nickelodeon, but Paramount as a whole, in the way that he's a greedy snob who doesn't do anything to help people with less money than themselves, and this entire movie feels like it was run by him, so from my understanding, Paramount must have become incredibly cheap when it comes to the budget, and pushed the animators and visual effects crew to do way too much prior to the deadline, which could add to why this feels more like an extended episode of SpongeBob. This is some of the most rushed animation I've ever seen to date, possibly close to Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate. The action and flying scenes, ending song, zany comedic antics, and soulless character models that feel like I'm watching the Lion King remake all over again certainly don't help, as the execution of the animation really ruins all of those. But worst of all, the visual effects. What's the best way that I can describe them?
My eyes! Ah! The pain!
Yeah, that. I thought the visuals in the Little Mermaid remake were horrendous, but these are some of the most inexcusable visuals and special effects I have ever seen in a feature film. When we're underwater starting in Bikini Bottom, the visuals are just bad at best. But when the characters exit out of the surface and embark on their journey, they immediately start to go from bad to worse. Of course, the animation is already terrible with such bad rendering and unbearably stiff movements, but when they try to mix live action with animation and the visual effects end up being equally hideous and rushed, it just becomes a pile of salt to an open wound, to the point that it physically hurts to sit through anything in this. Whether it be the bad-looking CG and abysmal-looking green screen effects, where none of them blend well at all, and Sponge Out of Water did it much better in every way. The fact that the backgrounds of the place that SpongeBob and Sandy go through that's supposed to be the Texas desert are actually the Beastie Badlands in New Mexico, which doesn't make sense at all. And the worst effect of all, the villain backstory, where they superimpose Hugh Nami's adult head on a kid's body. Are you serious right now, Nick? That's worse than turning Dr. Doofenshmirtz into another MODOK. I know this is supposed to be a joke, but I am still furious that any living, breathing executive looked at this and thought this is even acceptable. I never thought I'd have to do this again watching another movie, but I felt like getting a sleeping mask out so I didn't have to see much of what's going on to continue watching. And I thought the Norm of the North movies were the only times where I had to do so. While I am sure that the animators and visual artists did what they could with the budget that they were given, it just feels like the companies really pushed the limits to the point that it's only biting off more than it can chew, and if we're really gonna go that route, then why should this thing even bother to exist in the first place? Why, this Sandy Cheeks movie may be the most horrible, putrid, poorly made, vile, unwatchable, disgusting excuse for a SpongeBob movie it has ever been my displeasure to have projected in front of my eyes, and I curse this movie and all who enjoy it to an early and well-deserved grave! But in all seriousness, Saving Bikini Bottom is just downright terrible. Not only is it the worst SpongeBob movie, but it's also one of the worst things that Nickelodeon has ever done with SpongeBob, one of the worst animated films on Netflix, and also what I consider the worst animated film that Nickelodeon has ever made. Not even good voice acting and a decent concept are enough to salvage this god-awful movie from being a complete waste of time and excruciating to sit through with a hopeless script, no sense of a story, low-quality animation, hideous visual effects, characters who have all become caricatures of their former selves and serve little purpose to the film, and the worst humor ever delivered from the franchise in seasons 6 to 8. This is just Nickelodeon trying to further turn SpongeBob into a shameless cash cow so that they can be at the top of their game regardless of what it means for the sponge in the future. Nickelodeon doesn't think they have to try anymore because now they're too reliant on nostalgia to suffer long-term consequences for a failed IP. And they're so unaware of the permanent damage being done to the IP because they only care about how stupidly profitable it is. Remember the Nickelodeon that actually cared about making good shows that can be enjoyed by anyone, whether it's from their main channel or their Nick Jr. preschool brand? The one that gave us all those shows we loved as kids and rediscovered and loved even more as grown-ups? Hope you said goodbye to that Nickelodeon because it no longer exists. Nick nowadays doesn't concern itself with a show's quality, only if it makes money and garners tons of viewers. They seem to view SpongeBob SquarePants as
the big one.
The one that will earn them the big bucks, since it was and has always been their biggest show for over 2 decades. However, they also butchered the show's reputation twice, both during season 6 to 8 and ever since season 12. And I'm not trying to act as if Nickelodeon somehow defiled his legacy, because that's more disrespectful to him than what's been done to the franchise since then. This is the real problem with modern SpongeBob. They don't understand what made the early seasons so good in the first place, only seeing it as a money printer. Whether it be the new episodes of the main show, the spin-off shows, or the recent movies, they don't see SpongeBob as a creative work of art. They only see it as something to squeeze money out of that absorbent yellow and porous sponge, hell-bent on milking money for all it's worth to inhabify their corporate greed. And overall, it's become very tiring to see Nickelodeon like this. Nick is not Nick anymore. And even despite some good shows still, just hearing the name Nickelodeon leaves a sour taste in my mouth nowadays. Because at this rate, it now represents the face of a family TV company that will stop at nothing to keep their classic franchises alive even when there's no milk left to squeeze out. Now, some of you might one day request me to review the first Loud House movie, because I actually watched it, and I hate to break it to you guys, but even as a casual Loud House fan, I wasn't a big fan of that movie. It was above average at best. But in terms of reviewing it, this is why I just couldn't build the motivation to actually review it. Not only because people might come after me for saying something about the movie that isn't absolutely negative, but even if I got a boost in my monetization journey just by making a video on the Loud House, it just wouldn't be worth it, because I just can't bring myself to give a flinging crap anymore. After Camp Coral and the Patrick Star Show, I have become so sick and tired of Paramount and Nickelodeon just exploiting people's nostalgia for money and milking the legacy of their franchises bone dry with those crappy SpongeBob spin-offs and those crappy reboots of their older shows. I mean, I have heard good things about stuff like Blue's Clues and You and The Fairly OddParents and New Wish, and I know Stephen Hillenburg was aware of Camp Coral before his death, but other than that, many of these reboots failed to catch my interest, and it's very depressing to see them treating the SpongeBob movies in the exact same way, as they continue exploiting people's nostalgia in order for that zombie franchise to stay afloat, all because Nick sees it as their current go-to cash cow next to the Loud House, even snatching home that orange blimp for favorite cartoon every year when there are dozens of other nominees that could have had a chance to shine at the Kids' Choice Awards. And at that point, there will be no more sustainable franchises left to keep Nickelodeon afloat once SpongeBob and the Loud House are over. And ever since Dan Schneider's true colors were further revealed in that Quiet on Set documentary miniseries, not only do I not feel comfortable going back to shows like Drake and Josh, Victorious, or iCarly anymore, but it also made me learn how they've gone out of their way to show their true colors in terms of what they're willing to do just for some extra money. Paramount and Nickelodeon are not only greedy, but they've also become pretty morally corrupt to the point that I no longer feel comfortable giving them my financial trust. Between the string of failures that have been coming out of Paramount Animation recently, including their horrible publicity for Under the Boardwalk and their disastrous attempt to bring the Smurfs to the big screen once again, getting rid of several titles from their streaming platform in a desperate attempt to earn some cash back, the toxic environment caused by Dan Schneider on his shows, throwing any show that isn't SpongeBob or The Loud House under the bus to the brink of cancellation, and actually declaring a literal cutback on DEI and then canceling The Late Show with Stephen Colbert to comply with the demands of an actual fascist, I legitimately do not want a Paramount Plus subscription in my possession. If I want to relive my childhood, I'm better off resorting to the physical media that I have right now. Many of these are shows and movies I grew up watching when I was a kid, and I still have fond memories of them to this day. This movie is not one of my fondest memories of SpongeBob. In fact, far from it. And my best recommendation for all of you is to just watch at least the first SpongeBob movie, because it has more humor, heart, and nautical nonsense than this. The same way I would best recommend to watch the first 5 seasons of the show. I've seen episodes of modern SpongeBob that had a better grasp of storytelling than anything in this movie, and that is not an exaggeration. This movie is not the kind of nautical nonsense I wished for, so instead of wasting any more of my time going on for so long, I'm just gonna present a 3 out of 10 rating, leave the Dirksen stamp of failure right here, and drop on the deck and flop like a fish in the good days of SpongeBob, because this just further proves how this franchise has overstayed its welcome over the years. This is Caleb, over and out. Hey guys, how you doing? This is Caleb again, and I've got a special announcement right here before I actually close out today's video. Now, as you just saw, I've watched and reviewed Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, and I absolutely hated it. Like, as a fan of SpongeBob myself, not only is it the worst SpongeBob movie, but it's also what I believe to be the worst thing to ever come out of SpongeBob SquarePants, and one of the worst things that Nickelodeon has ever done. But if you haven't been made aware yet, most of the stuff I've reviewed on Caleb Reviews is a piece of media that I actively dislike. Whether it's with Strange Magic, Norm of the North 2 and 4, Walking with Dinosaurs 3D, Food Fight, Freebirds, The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, In Search of Santa, The Emoji Movie, Megamind vs. The Doom Syndicate, even my first actual review on the series with Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, plus my short thoughts on Disney's live-action remake of Pinocchio. That makes about 12 negative reviews I've done. The positive ones I've done include stuff like Zootopia, Phineas and Ferb Candace Against the Universe, Onward, The Nightmare Before Christmas, the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and The Emperor's New Groove. That's only 6 reviews I've done where I actually found the subject to be genuinely good. I haven't even done a single review on Caleb Reviews where I have mixed feelings on this subject, like somewhere between 5 and 6 out of 10. I either really liked the thing, or really hated that thing. So ever since I started this review series, I've watched or listened to some review shows and podcasts where they would review something through a randomizer tool or a request from someone on internet sites like Patreon, and I eventually got the idea to create my own randomizer so that whatever animated film it lands on, that will be the next thing I review, whether it ends up being positive, negative, or in between. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you my new system for reviewing animated films on Caleb Reviews, the Wheel of Animation. Yes, this is going to be my reviewing system where I'll be putting whatever requests I get for the next Caleb Reviews, and whatever the spinner lands on will be the next subject of that review. But for this first spin, all the animated films you see right here are my picks for whatever I might end up reviewing next. I have yet to start taking requests from people, but if you would like to send me some requests for the Wheel of Animation, you can either make a pledge to my Patreon at patreon.com/Caleb Dirksen, or post your requests in the comments of my new Caleb Reviews subreddit at reddit.com/r/Caleb Reviews. And as long as you're patient, your request will come after I put it on the wheel. So without further ado, let's make our first spin of the Wheel of Animation. Wheel of Animation, spin, spin, spin. Tell us the next review that I might win. And the next review is... Megamind! Oh man! This is something I've wanted to review for quite a while because, like, I've already done the sequel, Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate, and that was an absolute disaster, like a big disgrace to one of my favorite DreamWorks movies, which is right here on the wheel. But now I finally have the opportunity to review the original Megamind, the actually good Megamind that became a cult classic among many DreamWorks fans, including me. So, next time on Caleb Reviews, I'm going to be reviewing the original 2010 DreamWorks movie, Megamind. This is Caleb, over and out.